Welcome back to Open Line. I'm Hannah McDonald tonight, and we are talking. I'm Hannah McDonald every night, but tonight we are talking with Samuel Rainey, who is here to talk about 2 sessions that he and his colleague are running. He is a licensed therapist. We're talking about severe weather anxiety and processing last year's tornadoes. Samuel, we've mentioned already that tornadoes are always a possibility in this part of the country. We're actually seeing more tornadoes here than in years past. The Red Cross sent out an interesting email, funny enough, today to me, telling me that the area we are most seeing tornadoes seems to be moving from the Plains states to the southeast and the Midwest. You have lived in Arkansas. You have lived in Tennessee. Can you talk to our viewers about some of the personal experiences that you have had, that you've learned from, and that's why you're educated to talk to us about this topic tonight?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier that, as a kid growing up in Little Rock, Arkansas, that we had, several storms that came through. I think we're on the southern tail of, I think what's called Tornado Alley that runs up through Oklahoma. And for whatever reason, we had lots of these storms growing up. I don't recall too many specific tornadoes that were very close to our house. I think I mentioned earlier the one that was a couple blocks away. My parents actually 4 or 5 years ago had a tornado that bounced over their house. So they told me that they gathered in their safe place, and they saw the rain cloud coming, and they felt the pressure drop in their house, or they felt that pressure. And that was the closest that they'd ever experienced it. And they've lived in Arkansas for 40 plus years. So plenty of storm experiences, but thankfully I've not been kind of in the path of one. But I think as a watching and kind of growing up in this area, just seeing how quickly they can strike, and how I can't do anything to influence where they're going to strike. I have a really, I think, healthy fear of what tornadoes can do, and that's really influenced both what I do with my family, but also even in the professional work I do as a therapist, not necessarily specific to weather, but just engaging with my clients and with the people that I work with around dealing with issues that they don't have specific control over. And this is one of those kind of the top level things that I think affects all of us, that we need to begin to address and make sure that we've got a good plan in place for how we're going to handle it.
We've already had a caller talk to us tonight about PTSD, and you have brought it up too. I had looked up earlier today, is there any sort of medical term specifically for weather anxiety that you are aware of? I know people have talked about phobias. Do you know if this is something that even beyond these process sessions, people can talk to someone about more permanently?
Yeah, so I don't know of anything that's specific to weather, but I do know that because of the dangers and the devastating effects of tornadoes, weather in general, hurricanes, earthquakes, things like that, I do know that it has the same kind of core impact on our psyche and on who we are. And so trauma related to storms, there's no specific term for that, but I do think that there's a direct correlation with it, that left unaddressed will, like one of the earlier callers, go decades. Like, people may have gone decades with this feeling of like severe panic or severe anxiety that really limits their ability to function when a storm arises. And so living here in this area with all of the storms that we have, I think it would be really important to pay attention to if something that you have going on feels like it's too much, or it feels like it's overwhelming your ability to function. I would really encourage you to seek out some professional help. That's one of the reasons we're doing these 2 process groups, is to help people to be able to tell their story, because one of the ways that we humans make sense of the world that we live in and make sense of our world is by telling stories. We share our experience, and that addresses a couple of different areas of kind of the psychology of humans. And one of those is connecting with others. It's the power of universality. It's that it's like, Hannah, if I know that you've experienced something and you know that I've experienced something, and we can connect on that, that addresses this core fear that we have, that we're all alone to deal with the perils of the world. And so sharing our stories is a way of connecting with others, but also a way to kind of get out what we have maybe been holding on internally about these fears or these experiences. And to begin to speak about them allows us to kind of release some of the energy that we might have been carrying around about these storms and about the potential of future storms.
Yeah, take the weight off your shoulders by talking about it with someone else. Don't carry it alone. 737-7587. Call us and talk to us about anything that you have felt, anything that's worked for you, perhaps, too. That's always important, and that's what we're doing here tonight, sharing our stories to help each other. Samuel, I know one of the feelings some people had last year, one of the feelings was survivor's guilt. Here in Nashville, that tornado that came through downtown, it picked certain places and left others unscratched. Can that have lasting effects too?
Absolutely, because there's, when chaos strikes, there's no rhyme or reason as to why it strikes or where it strikes. And because I think the magnitude of something like the tornadoes last year, and the fact that it took the specific path that it did, and perhaps at the last minute it veered off from the path of this one house, and it ended up hitting this other house. And I think in terms of that feeling of experiencing chaos, I think we humans have a hard time metabolizing that. We have a hard time figuring out, why did this happen and this didn't happen? And so I think the impact of that can have devastating influences on how we make sense of life in the future. Because if we can't really explain what has happened, then it might feel like we're just kind of a ship off in this vast ocean, just being blown to and fro by wherever the wind is blowing. And that can be I think an existentially really scary experience to have to address.
I want to make sure we remind people when they can have these conversations with others, because that's what this is all about. The two coming up this Friday and next Friday. We have a graphic that we are just putting up on the screen now. These are Zoom conversations. There is an email there right now. Martin is who Samuel works with on a day-to-day basis. They are counselors together. So Martin at midtncounseling.com is who you contact to sign up. I'm sure no matter who is there, it'll be an interesting conversation like the one we're having right now, because at the end of the day, anybody who lives in Nashville is likely to experience our meteorologists telling them about a possible tornado at this point of the year. It is March. Spring storm season is here. I want to talk about making a kit at home, because it may feel silly to people rather than serious. Can you talk about what to put in a kit and how easy it is?
Yeah, so I think this can be something that we can be playful with, and maybe even have some fun with. That in a lot of ways, the chaos of the storm needs to have some sense of play about it for us to make to feel like we're not at such at the mercy of whatever the storm is. And so, it might feel silly to put together a kit or a bag or something, but I think grabbing a small duffel bag and putting some water in it, maybe putting some snacks in there. I'm going to be speaking more on behalf of the kind of going through these like with kids, because that's more of my context. So, if you don't have young kids at home, or you don't have dependents that you're taking care of, snacks may not be an appropriate thing to put in there. But I know that anytime I break out a bag of Cheetos or Doritos, my kids are they're thrilled. So, putting something like that in there gives my kids something to look forward to once we get into our safe space. Like, Dad, can I have the Skittles, or can I have the Cheetos or something? So, but also I think what food helps us with is that I think it helps us to feel like we're taking care of the basic needs that we have, like food, clothing, shelter, and water, like those things to make sure that we're not just jumping into the safe room and hoping nothing happens. Because I've heard lots of stories where people get trapped for hours inside of rubble, and it sometimes takes rescue workers a long time to find them and to pull the rubble off. And so, having something there of food or of drink might be might be the difference, for you and your family of really severe injuries, and being able to walk out of there feeling like it was okay. So I think that begins to address some of those things. A weather radio, I think, is another thing to put in there, because when we lose power, we're so dependent on our cell phones, right? And if we lose power and the cell towers go out, I think a lot of us are going to feel pretty disconnected and pretty out of control. So having a weather radio, as old-fashioned as that might sound, I think is something really, really important. Something else that would be good for people to consider getting is a weighted blanket. Weighted blankets are the size of a throw that you would have on your couch, but might weigh 8 to 12 pounds. And these blankets are actually, they've been kind of making themselves known pretty frequently over the last 5 to 10 years. I think with counseling getting a little bit more accessible, and people having more anxiety and a heightened sense of feeling out of control. And what these weighted blankets do is they help to produce serotonin in our bodies to calm us down. Because when we have anxiety, our body's not producing the chemicals that we need to help to kind of face the challenges that we're facing. It's kind of like having a thunder jacket for a dog. You put that on, and it holds the dog tight to make them feel safe and secure. So a weighted blanket might be something that, if this is an issue for you or for your family, to consider doing. You can get them pretty cheaply on Amazon or a lot of other online retailers.
Great advice. We're not done with you yet, Samuel. We're going to take a quick break. Call us if you'd like to talk to us and tell us about your experiences. You're watching Open Line.